The tragedy genre has been around for centuries, as its earliest origins are seen in the early 6th century BC. This type of genre was popularized by many playwrights in ancient Greece and Asia. This drama highlighted the negative characteristics of mankind and also the inescapable horrors of life. The traditional definition of tragedy was created by Greek philosopher Aristotle. He said that a work could only be a tragedy if it was a drama, a character was from high social status and had a fatal flaw, the work evoked pity in the audience, and had a heightened literary style. Now, a tragedy must only include 3 characteristics: a sadness that occurs through later changes in the work, a character's isolation, and a downfall, which is not dependent on the protagonist's background. Sarah Freeman says in her essay that a character begins their tragic journey once they undo a religious certainty or unmoor a universal truth or hierarchy. Then the character's view of the world has been altered, and they must learn to mourn the loss of the life that they knew while coming to terms with their new reality. Antigone rejects the role of King Creon by stating that she is not afraid to die for the crime of burying her brother. Instead, she would gladly die and be with him for following her own morals. Moreover, she believes that the king's ruling to be unjust and that the gods will judge her actions as pure. So she learns to cope with the reality of her new inevitable death. For a character to be tragic, they must experience isolation from their own society. George Steiner describes that isolation creates an unwelcome environment for the tragic character, which prompts the character to make hasty decisions that ultimately leads to their downfall. Antigone is isolated by the rules of the state as the king refuses to allow the burial of her brother. Antigone sees this law as unjust, and so being singled out by King Creon, her stubbornness enhances and causes her to disobey the king and ultimately catalyze her death. The protagonist does not need to be a royal falling from the throne to be considered tragic. Instead, the character is a person of any background who undergoes a downfall. Frank Doster explains that what matters is not the character's personal background, but instead their morals and decisions that leads to their untimely destruction. Antigone's sister Esme states that they must follow Creon's rules because they are women. The lack of power for women, specifically Antigone, shows that a character does not need to lose power to be considered tragic. Even though she is of high class, her gender limits her power and demonstrates that anyone can be a tragic protagonist, as long as they have a fatal flaw and their story ends in tragedy. The definition of tragedy is ever-changing and evolving, which makes it incredibly hard to set a concrete definition for it. Today, tragedy takes on characteristics stemming all the way from ancient Greece to the mismatched elements we know today. No one definition is right, but individually we can continue to use literary research and establish our own view of the essence of what tragedy truly is.